I did not know for a long time what my mother had done. I knew the broad shape of it, the calluses on her hands, the way she rose before dawn and came home after dark. The tin box on the highest shelf of the kitchen, set aside for me and never to be asked about. I was 17 when she sent me to London. A letter of placement, a trunk she had packed herself, enough coin for a year's board at the conservatory on Aldgate Lane. She stood on the platform and did not cry. She told me to eat properly and write every Sunday. I wrote. She wrote back. She never mentioned Carrenwood. It was my mother's friend, Mrs. Hartley, the rector's housekeeper, a woman constitutionally incapable of keeping a secret past the month of its origin, who told me, years later, what the tin box had cost. By then I was 26. By then I was back in Shropshire. By then the Duke of Carrenwood had already asked my mother to marry him twice, and she had said no both times, and the third time was coming. This is what I was told. This is what I have pieced together since. This is, as best I can reconstruct it, the shape of a thing I did not see but will spend the rest of my life grateful for. My mother's name was Wren Aldgate, born Wren Hollis, daughter of a curate in Ludlow, married at 21 to my father, a vicar of modest gifts and immoderate goodness, dead of a fever when I was 9. She had no family money. A small house in the village of Carren, a kitchen garden tended with the precision of someone who could not afford to lose a single turnip, and a son whose hands would not stop moving across whatever flat surface was near him. The table, the windowsill, the worn spine of a hymnal, as though music were something that leaked out of him whether he wished it or not. She did not complain about the money. She did what my mother always did with inconvenient realities. She looked at them directly, without drama, and then she solved them. In the October of my 16th year, she answered an advertisement at Carrenwood Park, scrub work. Pre-dawn hours, 4 days a week, the back entrance. No visitors, no conversation with the family or guests. Full discretion expected on both sides. She gave her name as Mrs. Wren. Not a lie. Not quite the truth. She asked specifically that her name not be relayed to the Duke. She was told this was an unusual request. She said she imagined it was. She was hired the following morning. Carrenwood Park was run with the efficiency of a military campaign and the warmth of a tax assessment. The Duke, Aldous Crane, the Duke of Carrenwood, known in 3 counties as the Stone Duke, was not a cruel employer. He was indifferent to the existence of anyone who did not require his active attention. The household ran. He moved through its corridors like a man who could not be surprised by any of it. He rose early. That was the thing no one had thought to mention in the advertisement. The first morning my mother came to the east corridor before dawn. Lamp in hand and bucket quiet against her knee, she turned the corner and walked directly into the Duke of Carrenwood's greatcoat. She did not startle. She said, "Pardon me, sir," and stepped around him and continued down the corridor. He stood for a moment, then he went on. She was out the back entrance before breakfast was laid. She came back Thursday. He was there again. She said good morning, because she was not by nature an impolite woman. He said nothing. She worked. He went to his library, where he saw to his correspondence before the house could find him. By November they had established, entirely without discussion, a kind of silent accord. She arrived. He was sometimes there, and sometimes not. When he was there, she worked around him. He moved when he needed to move. Neither of them spoke unless spoken to, and neither of them spoke. My mother told Mrs. Hartley years afterward that she had found it restful. It was December when it changed. Or rather, it was December when the thing that had been quietly happening finally broke the surface. She had come to the library passage before light. She did not usually do. The library passage was Thursday work, and this was a Wednesday. But Mrs. Poole, the housekeeper, had asked her to swap her schedule for the week on account of a dinner party. She came around the corner with her lamp and found the Duke standing very still at the passage window, looking out at the frost-black garden, and she saw, in the quarter second before he heard her, that he looked like a man who had been standing in that particular silence for some time. She stopped. He turned. She said, "I beg your pardon. I've swapped my day. I can come back." He said, "Don't." She waited. He said, "No, stay. I was just..." She would tell Mrs. Hartley, visibly uncomfortable with the fact that he had begun a sentence he could not finish. She said, "I'll start at the far end." She did. He stayed. He did not read. She worked. After a time, he said without preamble, "Do you have family in the village?" She said, "A son. In London." He said, "What does he do?" She said, "He studies music." A pause. "Is he good?" "He is," she said simply. "The best thing I have ever made." She had not meant to say it quite like that. She heard it after, the way you hear your own voice coming back from a stone wall. But she did not retract it. It was true, and she had learned from my father that the only things worth saying were the ones that were true. The Duke of Carrenwood looked at her for a moment. Then he picked up his candle and went back to his correspondence without another word. She finished the passage and left, but he remembered. That was the thing she did not know. He had noted it, filed it away in whatever chamber of himself he reserved for things that mattered. The scrub woman who called her son the best thing she had ever made. He turned it over, privately, the way that certain men turn over a thing they cannot classify until they understand. January. February. The snow came, and the roads went quiet. She kept coming. He kept rising early. The silence between them deepened, in the way that only happens between two people who have run out of the need to fill it. He learned things without asking, that she worked without complaint or cutting corners, that she moved through a room with an unhurried precision that reminded him of a woman who had once run a household of her own, that she was never late, never careless, never treated any part of her work as beneath her attention. Not the muddy flagstone, not the grimy lamp glass, not the passages where the cold turned breath to vapor. He knew what it meant. He had seen enough of poverty to know the difference between a woman born to this work and one who had chosen it for reasons she was not advertising. In March he asked, with his usual economy of expression, "What is your name?" She said, "Mrs. Wren, sir." He looked at her. It was the look, Mrs. Hartley told me, of a man who knows he is being told a partial truth and has decided, for reasons of his own, to accept it for the moment. He said, and before that, she met his eyes. "Hollis," she said. "Wren Hollis of Ludlow." He went very still. She watched him arrive at it. The Hollis family of Ludlow was not obscure. Her mother had been a Trescott before her marriage, and the Trescotts had been county gentry for 200 years before the money ran out, none of which had translated into comfort. But the name was a name, and a man like the Duke of Carrenwood, who had catalogued the genealogy of every notable family in 3 counties, knew it the moment he heard it. She waited to see what he would do with it. He said, "You were presented." "Briefly," she said, "a long time ago." A pause. "And you are here." "I am here," she agreed without apology. He left. He came back the following Wednesday, not at his usual hour, but mid-morning, when the household was fully awake, and she had already been gone for hours. He stood in the library passage, with a look on his face that Mrs. Poole would later describe to Mrs. Hartley as the expression of a man who has finally worked out the answer to a long division problem. And found it smaller than he expected and larger than he can afford. He asked Mrs. Poole to find out, quietly, discreetly, with no fuss, what Mrs. Wren was being paid and why. Mrs. Poole found out. She reported back. The Duke said nothing for a long time. Then he said, "And the son?" Mrs. Poole told him about the conservatory, about the placement, about the tin box. He was quiet for another long moment. He said, "Has she ever asked for anything? Adjusted hours, early payment, any accommodation at all?" Mrs. Poole said no. The Duke said, "Tell Mr. Harwick to double her wage retroactively for every month she has worked here, and to pay the balance directly to her by Thursday." No explanation. No note. Simply the amount. Mrs. Poole said, "And if she asks?" He said, "She won't." She did not. She took the envelope from Mr. Harwick on Thursday morning without comment, looked at the figure inside, and then looked up at the wall for a moment, in the particular way that a woman looks at a wall when she is not going to cry, but needs a second to make that decision firm. Then she put the envelope in her pocket, thanked Mr. Harwick, and finished the east corridor. The Duke was not there that morning. He was, Mrs. Hartley told me, in his library writing a letter, the first of what would eventually be 7, all of them addressed to my mother, and all of them, for the first 4 months, sent anonymously through the village post, with no return address. They were not love letters, not at first. They were accounts of the conservatory district in London, notes on certain concert halls, the name of a second teacher whose methods Ferris's former students spoke well of. My mother received them and understood immediately who had sent them. She wrote no reply, but she kept everyone. I found them after in the tin box, beneath the receipts from Aldgate Lane. He asked her to marry him the first time in April, in the library passage, with no ceremony and no speech. He said he wished to make her an offer of marriage, if she was willing to hear it, and that he understood if she was not, and that her position was in no way contingent on her answer. She said she needed to think about it. He said, "Of course." She thought about it for 6 weeks. She wrote me a letter. The only letter in which she ever mentioned any of this. That said only, "There is a man here who has been quietly decent to me in ways I did not expect. I'm not sure what to do about it. Do you have any strong opinions? You may write them down, but I reserve the right to disregard them." I wrote back that she should do whatever made her happy, and that I had never in my life managed to talk her out of anything, and that I had no intentions of beginning now. She said yes in June. He was not. I want to be clear about this. A man who made speeches. He did not stand her before the assembled household and declare himself. He did not summon the county to bear witness. He simply looked at her when she gave her answer, in the library passage where it had all begun, and said, "Good," in the voice of a man for whom that one syllable contained a quantity of feeling he had no other word for. She told Mrs. Hartley he said it the way a man says it, when he has been holding his breath for months and has finally been given leave to stop. They were married in the village church in August, a small ceremony, family and household only. I played the organ. It was the first time I had played at Carrenwood, and the last time I would think of it as anything other than home. Afterward, in the kitchen garden, the same frost-gray garden my mother had looked out at, from the library passage that first dark morning, now green and loud with summer. The Duke stood beside her, and watched her straighten the collar of my coat, in the way she always did, the way she had done since I was 9 years old, and she had been doing everything alone, and he said to her, quietly, not quite to me, "You did all of it." My mother said, "He did most of it himself." The Duke said, "You gave him the ground to stand on." She looked at him. He looked back at her. It was not, I think, a moment intended for my benefit. I pretended to be very interested in a rosebush. She has told me since that she never expected to be found. She had built a life from the understanding that the world did not look at the woman on her knees in the corridor. She had stopped expecting to be looked at. She had stopped needing it. And then one gray December morning she rounded a corner, and a man turned from a frost-black window and looked at her. Actually looked, the way you look when you are trying to understand something. And she had thought, well, that is unexpected. He has never stopped looking at her. The most important thing is not the money, not the marriage, not any of the outward shapes of the life she lives now. The most important thing is that she spent years being invisible, and she was not diminished by it. She was entirely herself the whole time, working before dawn in a cold passage, counting coins in a tin box, writing her son letters about eating properly and writing on Sundays. And one morning a man with a candle turned around and saw her. And he has not forgotten her name since.